The allegations being discussed in this video are very difficult to listen to and may be uncomfortable to some viewers. All views and opinions expressed are my own. The document used is being used for the purpose of review under the Fair Use Act disclaimer. Hello and a very warm welcome to the Gimme a Hug Yeah Wrestling Podcast. My name is Anne. I hope you're having a good day and I hope that the sunshine is in your heart for sure, even though it's freezing here. Today we're going to be talking specifically about the Laurinaitis part of this case with the plaintiff Janel Grant and the allegations made against him. So he had a report that was Vice reached out to his lawyers for a statement. And the lawyers gave him a statement. And it is absolutely shocking, some of the stuff that came out. It really sort of turned the case on its head if these allegations are to be believed. So we're going to have a look at what he said, exactly how he's defended himself. And then we're going to compare it back to the original case as well, the original paperwork that was put in by Janel Grant. And because he was named as one of the people in that case. So we're going to sort of have a look at it. I am interested. I want you to comment in the video, but I also want you to be respectful. People have different opinions on this, and that's absolutely cool. But we all have to keep it respectful. It is difficult situations that we are talking about here, which we need to look at if it makes any sense. Okay, so let's get into the things that John Laurinaitis said on this Vice media report. So that's the wrong one. So it was reached out by the lawyer for John Laurinaitis in the explosive civil sex trafficking lawsuit. This is all brought to you by Vice. Last week, Vince McMahon and WWE itself, as well as John Laurinaitis. While disputing Laurinaitis' role as described in the complainant. Edward Brennan, which was the lawyer speaking on behalf of John Laurinaitis, said that the client himself was a victim, just like the plaintiff, Janel Grant, a former WWE employee. So that in itself is huge. He's there saying that he was a role in this. He's accepting part of it, and he's saying he was also a victim in this case, which means he's partly, on one hand, corroborating part of the story. I'm sure there'll be a lot that he says against it. Let's get through exactly what Mr. Laurinaitis' lawyer said. Said Mr. Laurinaitis denies the allegations of the misguided complaint and will be vigorously defending these charges in court, not the media. Like the plaintiff, Mr. Laurinaitis is a victim in this case, not a predator. The truth will come out. That was the first part of the quote that I found very interesting from Laurinaitis' lawyer. Second one. It says, read the allegations, read the federal statute, power, control, employment, supervisory capacity, dictatorial sexual demands with repercussions if not met. Count how many times in the complaint Vince exerts control over both of them. So that's exactly what we're going to do in this episode. We're going to look over the complaint and we're going to see if this has any legs. If John Laurinaitis, what he's saying, has any legs. If Vince did exert control and how they can potentially prove that in a court or potentially not. Once again, he has said these charges in a court. He is going to defend these in a court. Laurinaitis at this point is saying he's going to fight it in the court. So first of all, I want to get your sort of reactions on what he said there. And then we'll sort of break down the actual civil lawsuit itself. And we'll go through exactly what we think about that. What do you guys have to say? Trigger warning for this video. Thank you so much. A massive trigger warning, folks. Watch at your own discretion. Absolutely. It's some horrific stuff. And we are focusing on the Laurinaitis side of things today. But we will obviously maybe be talking about other things as well. Hey, Jake, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us. I believe that there's some truth to what John is saying. I believe Vince most certainly did pressure him, and maybe even said, if you don't, you will lose your job, but still very much in the wrong. Well, that brings about a great question, Jake, and I appreciate your opinion. Thank you so much for sharing it, man. If he has done, whether he's been pressured or not, he has impacted her life. Okay. The rape allegations, which is part of the lawsuit that we'll get into, come directly in the lawsuit to Vince McMahon and Laurinaitis in one case, both raping, which is where she was saying no, and they continued against her will. So even if he was pressured into it, it is wrong. Am I saying that he wasn't pressured into it? Absolutely not. He could have felt pressured into it. I think there's one thing that stands apart in the case as we sort of go through it that makes me question the legitimacy of it, because I think any human being would have reacted differently. Just my opinion. We'll go into that when we get into the case. But thank you, Jake, for sharing that, man. Yeah. He should have said no if that was the case. And absolutely, Jake. And the interesting part, Jake, is was there opportunity for him to say no? And did he continue? And we'll get into the allegations and we'll see if them opportunity were granted to him. Okay. Never Like John says The Cure. That's fair enough, man. That's an absolute opinion. There's a lot of cases. One of the things I'm going to do as a separate video actually is bring out some other sort of quotes from mainstream wrestling personalities and stuff like that that are talking about John Laurinaitis and talking about this case in particular, and see if we can collate anything, because there's a lot of people talking about it. We have people like Bischoff talking about it. We have people like Cornette talking about it. But the Bellas issued a statement that was really interesting. Ronda Rousey issued a statement, and I think it's all worth sort of discussing. So maybe we'll go into that later in the video. Or maybe it'll be a separate video. I'm not entirely sure. I think maybe do it as this video, but we'll do it after we've sort of looked at the Laurinaitis stuff, because I find that's the most sort of poignant, with him being named as one of the people in the case. The strange thing is this basically confirms the allegations against Vince, if true. That is the very interesting thing, Jake. You are absolutely right. Since he is not denying it, he is admitting that it happened. He's admitting that parts of it happened. He's also going to defend against other parts. It did say denies the allegations in the misguided complaint and will vigorously defend these charges in court. Mr. Laurinaitis is a victim in this case, not a predator. The truth will come out. And again, if we look at the other interesting quote within this, the allegations read the federal statute: power, control, employment, supervisory capacity, dictatorial sexual demands with repercussions if not met. Count how many times in the complaint Vince exerts control over both of them. So in that sentence there, in that last little bit of the quote there, count how many times in the complaint Vince exerts control over both of them. Laurinaitis, or Laurinaitis' lawyers, in that quote there, in the last half of that quote there, is confirming that elements of this are true, because he's saying, look at it, Vince is controlling both of them. Is that not what he's saying? He's saying there's elements of this that are correct. Now, the really interesting thing from this is it was Janel Grant against Vince McMahon, John Laurinaitis, and the WWE. And instead of them putting on a united front, which is the way I think we all sort of expected it to go, I certainly did. Maybe I'm naive, but I expected that to be the case. Laurinaitis' defense is actually, Vince had control of me as well. I am a victim in this case. I think it took us all aback. But if you've got any more opinions on this, get these in the comments and we'll go through them in a bit. But at the moment, I want to get up the case once again, the document that I'm sure we'll be going back to many a times until more evidence is brought forward. So where are we? Here we are. Let me just get my screen. There we go. That's better. I hope you can all read that and read along with me. So the section of the filing that we're going to is in section H, which was McMahon recruits Laurinaitis into his exploitation of Miss Grant and transfers her into Laurinaitis' department at WWE, trafficking and sex acts at WWE headquarters. So once again, naming both Laurinaitis, both McMahon, but also WWE by saying it was in their place of employment. It's saying it's in their building. So they are once again who Janel Grant is going after in this case. Let's get through this because it's, once again, trigger warning, there's some horrific stuff here. I have put links in the description. If any of you are facing anything like this in a real world environment, please do check out them links. They might help you out. But also, like, if something like this is happening and you're aware of it, don't be afraid to speak out because that's a right thing to do. Okay, the people you can talk to. Obviously, Miss Grant didn't feel she had that in WWE, and that's the allegations that were being made. Right, let's go into this. On November the 2020, McMahon pressed Miss Grant to make explicit photos and videos to send to Laurinaitis. McMahon orchestrated exchanges by instructing Miss Grant when to create explicit content for Laurinaitis, including what to say, and provide her with notes to adjust her performance. McMahon then facilitated the exchange of explicit content back and forth between Miss Grant and Laurinaitis. Notably, even once phone numbers were exchanged between Miss Grant and Laurinaitis, McMahon insisted that he be privy to any messages that Miss Grant sent to Laurinaitis and demanded that she reported back about all interactions, further illustrating the level of control he had over Mrs. Grant. So, in that section there, we're seeing that what Laurinaitis is claiming in 153 on that court document is actually potentially true. He didn't approach Miss Grant. It was McMahon who got her in contact with Laurinaitis, the contact between Laurinaitis and Miss Grant, exerting his control over both of them, if that was his case to argue. So in that, and in a few of these, like, there are the defense that Laurinaitis is using is actually quite clever. Because what he can say in a court, whether it's true or not, right? What he can say in the court is he can say, this part of it's true. I was put into this situation in the same way that she was. And who can prove that apart from the people involved? I don't know. Maybe there'll be text messages that can prove it. Maybe there'll be other evidence, but that's why what we won't see until it goes to court. And one of the interesting things is my opinion about the court thing has changed since these allegations, since this defense from Laurinaitis has come about. On or about the December the 29th, 2020, a threesome was arranged between McMahon, Laurinaitis, and Miss Grant at McMahon's condo. McMahon instructed her to tell Laurinaitis that she was a neighbor and girlfriend working in the legal field, but not at WWE. So once again, McMahon, having control over the plaintiff, is saying that he was controlling her and to make sure that she was telling Laurinaitis lies at the time, say that that control element is there. And Laurinaitis, from his point of view, if he was told that by both McMahon and Miss Grant, then he potentially doesn't have to question it. He'd take that on face value, I suspect, unless this has happened in the past. I'm not just trying to defend Laurinaitis here, because there's a lot in it that goes on, but I'm trying to look at this in terms of what he said and how his defense can be put together. And I think there are elements of this, like I've just talked about, which is potential for exactly what he's saying. Okay. On or about December the 29th, we've just read that. 155, shortly after meeting Laurinaitis, Ms. Grant asked him if she was the first woman who McMahon had introduced him to in such a setting. Laurinaitis failed to respond and shot a look directly at McMahon, who quickly intervened by kissing Miss Grant and initiating sexual encounter amongst the three of them. Once again, Miss Grant asked for protection. Once again, her request was denied after the assurance that Laurinaitis was clean. Again, there, she asked a question, and McMahon was the controlling person in that situation that the Miss Grant is alleging, in saying, no, I've asked a question, but it was McMahon that put a stop to it. So Laurinaitis was unable to answer. That will be part of his defense. In the days that follows, McMahon tested her that Laurinaitis hugged me like a bear and said thank you to me about 12 times already. In contrast, Laurinaitis messaged Miss Grant, thanks for the fun afternoon. Once again, could absolutely be arguing Laurinaitis' case. You know, people are quite people are very easy to straight away say, no, that's not true. That's not the case whatsoever. But actually, in terms of what we read there, we can see why his defense has gone with that action. Why his defense is saying we agree with parts of these allegations. Just 1 second. Let me sort out the stream. Cool. There we go. Let's see. On February the 5th, 2021, McMahon sent Ms. Grant to establish a schedule for when other men, including the physical therapist and Laurinaitis, could have sex with Ms. Grant, which Ms. Grant attempted to read both. So this is the text. Once again, the screenshots from the text, putting in evidence into the case, which is why I think this, whoever wrote this, it's fantastic in terms of if you are going against someone and you can put bits of evidence in this to say, we have this, we will bring this out to the public at this point, but we will potentially bring out more. It makes the idea of Vince McMahon wanting to settle this case even more viable. However, now with Laurinaitis going against it, against some of this and saying that he was a victim of Vince McMahon, maybe it can't be settled. Maybe it can't be. Maybe, let me put this to you, maybe this is Laurinaitis just wanting some money himself out of it because he was thrown under the bus by Vince when he was fired. Potentially. It's up to you two guys to decide. Write in the comments what you think. I'm going to get to them all as we go through. So this was a text. Exactly, baby. He's not the only one. Someone called me this afternoon begging to eat you and fuck you with his nice and hard penis. Give me another week, baby, and I'll be ready. I'm feeling more like myself. It's not great, but it's getting better. Tell her soon. So she's saying, no, give me time. Give me space to heal up. And Vince replies, I already told him, baby. By the way, Johnny wants Tuesdays, but not this coming one and the occasional Saturday. But maybe I can shift it to Thursday nights. Johnny would like all of the above. Once again, showing that Vince McMahon was scheduling her, controlling her, but also, in the case of Laurinaitis' defense, potentially sorting out his schedule. That'll be Johnny's argument with this case, okay? About March 6th, 2021, a second threesome between McMahon, Laurinaitis, and Miss Grant occurred. So at this point in the plaintiff's records, it's threesomes that are happening between McMahon, Laurinaitis, and Miss Grant. Okay, so it's happening multiple times. Let's go down here. This is other stuff, but you can absolutely read it. I'm trying to pick out the points that I think are relevant at this point. On March the 16th, 2021, Miss Grant was directed to pick up a key to Laurinaitis' hotel room and serve herself to him as breakfast before work. So going to Laurinaitis, I'd assume the term breakfast means for sexual pleasure of some sort, whether it was her for sexual pleasure for him, I think is the implication there for sure, because Miss Grant was directed to. Now, this is where I have a major problem with Laurinaitis' defense. If Miss Grant was going to Laurinaitis to have sex with him at a hotel away from Vince McMahon, however, didn't want to do so, then Laurinaitis, who says he was a victim of Vince McMahon, was actually doing this for himself at this point. So while all the other encounters have been a threesome, and we could say that is an indication of Laurinaitis being controlled by Vince McMahon, if he's doing it outside and not saying to Janel, when he's got an opportunity with her on a one-on-one situation, to say, look, I don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. Let's forget about it. Let's move on. Let's not bother doing this. But she certainly, in my opinion, felt trapped. John Laurinaitis is saying he felt trapped. But if that was the case, why would you do this outside of the threesome situations? Probably his defense will argue he felt forced to do it because of the pressures of Vince McMahon, and if she ever found out and all this sort of stuff. There's a bit of that comes up in the case. McMahon constantly reinforced the expectation that Mrs. Grant sexually performed for him and her new boss, Laurinaitis, both in and out of the office. McMahon wrote on March of 2020 22nd, 2021. And you promise to make me proud, baby. Will you show him what a porno star you can be? Will you show off for me like never before? And on days when he's in town, I want you to make love to him every morning and later in the office too. Absolutely disgusting behavior on the part of McMahon. But saying that she had to do it, and again, Laurinaitis' defense will say that she was forced to do it, that he was forced to do it as well. McMahon also indicated on April the 2nd, 2021, that Miss Grant should obey if Laurinaitis wanted to bring in more men. Maybe if he wants two of the guys, you join him. You've told him you would do anything with him. So if he surprised you with two others, you would have no alternative than to take them on. OMG, the stories you could tell me then. It makes me want to ejaculate right now. By the way, I just thought of what I think is an excellent idea. Maybe you can hint that if he knows someone who can be discreet, it might be better if you and Johnny try him out first so he can be more comfortable before he's introduced to me. Actually, that makes total sense, doesn't it? Once again, in this is directions from McMahon about her being with Laurinaitis, and we haven't seen the other side of it. If Laurinaitis' defense is valid, then he will have evidence of being pushed against his will or manipulated into the behavior in the same way that Janel Grattan, the plaintiff, has put it in here. Okay. As soon as Miss Grant began working directly for Laurinaitis, forcible touching and overtly sexual behaviors became part of daily life when he was in the office. And this is, again, the problem that Laurinaitis is going to have. If she's saying it was forcible touching, if she's saying it was against her will, then the things that his lawyer is saying can't be right. It won't stand up in a court of law. It's a damn interesting defense in terms of taking what Janel Grant's written in this and using it against her early on. But there's other things that she's saying which would have no chance in a court of law. On numerous occasions, to my understanding, I'm not a bloody lawyer, but to my understanding, on numerous occasions, Ms. Grant was directed to visit Laurinaitis at his hotel room before work to serve herself to him as breakfast. These devastating experiences made Ms. Grant feel as though she were being pimped out as an object for sexual gratification for her new boss. Upon information and belief, corporate funds from the WWE were used to finance his Laurinaitis hotel stays when these coerced sexual encounters occurred. Coerced. Is that coerced by McMahon? Is that coerced by Laurinaitis? It does say at the start of that, at 175, Miss Grant began working directly for Laurinaitis. Forcible touching and overtly sexual behaviors become part of daily life in the office, which is not acceptable in any workplace. And if Laurinaitis was doing that away from the threesomes that he was having with Ms. McMahon, I don't see that his lawyer's argument has much gravitas. Okay. Let's go through a little bit lower. Miss Grant again told McMahon that she did not want to engage in sexual encounters with Laurinaitis. Added, "I've left the hotel feeling bad about myself every time." McMahon responded that the one-on-one encounter could cease, but they expected the threesomes with Laurinaitis to continue. Once again, this is her putting a stop to it. It wasn't Laurinaitis that put a stop to it. It was her telling Vince over and over again that she wanted these sexual encounters to stop, or that's at least the allegation. Then we get into the hard part to argue. McMahon and Laurinaitis confined Miss Grant in an office for an abusive sexual assault in WWE headquarters. McMahon and Laurinaitis ignored her plea. So this is when she said there was going to have a threesome in the office. Brought her into Laurinaitis' office, forcibly touching her and dressing her before forcing her to engage in a threesome on a conference table. Whether he was coerced or not, it is not right to do this. When somebody is saying, as Miss Grant says, no, 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 and please stop, McMahon responds with no means yes. Wrong. It's so wrong. Ms. Grant again told them to stop. Instead, McMahon licked his fingers, penetrated Ms. Grant, and said, "Take it, bitch," with each taking turns to restrain her for the other. Laurinaitis then joined by forcibly shoving his tongue, then penis, into Miss Grant's mouth. Laurinaitis according to this allegation, was taking part in rape. His defense is he was made to do that by Vince. Whether he was made to do it or not, it is wrong. But that is his defense, okay? And we have to accept that that's his defense based on the stuff that his lawyers told Vice. On multiple other occasions, while Miss Grant worked under Laurinaitis, including after McMahon's promises that the one-on-one encounters would end, and even after his wife who was going through cancer treatment at the time, John Laurinaitis' wife, it's Brie and Nikki's mother. We'll get to some quotes from them later on in the stream. He would call Miss Grant to his office, lock the door, unzip his pants, and instruct Miss Grant to perform oral sex. It's very difficult because Laurinaitis is saying, I agree with parts of this, but not with other parts. And I get the sort of sense that he's just using what he can to come up with this defense. And when someone does that, he's corroborating certain parts of the story, which is not good for Vince and not good for WWE. However, I don't understand how it's going to be very difficult for a jury to understand when Laurinaitis is saying these parts are true, but this part isn't. Who are they going to believe in that situation? I don't know what the evidence is going to be like. You know, when we get the sort of, if this goes to trial and you start to see the evidence of the text messages between Laurinaitis and Miss Grant and Vince McMahon, etc., 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 that's going to be interesting. And I think we'll see how it goes. What do you guys think? Through all this, Miss Grant noticed that the less she sexually engaged with Laurinaitis, the less work she had, as Laurinaitis began to belittle Miss Grant in front of colleagues. Once again, there's other people involved there, other people that can give evidence in court to say if Laurinaitis was belittling Miss Grant in front of her. Okay, and then it kind of goes off. So what do you all think about that in terms of looking at that? We'll do some comments. We'll read some comments, and then I want to give you a load of quotes from other people. I might do it as a separate video yet as well, but quotes from other people while we're all sort of talking about it. Who from Dave Meltzer to Ronda Rousey to the Bella Twins to Dutch Mantel. We'll get them quotes up. We'll have a discussion about it. And like I say, it might be a separate video, but while you're here watching now, you get to engage with the content as it is. Okay. Cool. Thank you all so much for keeping it cool. I'm sorry I'm not really engaging in chat. I'm trying to sort of read documents and stuff like that. So let's get into the chat. Odd, he used the term misguided complaint. That is an attack on Grant. Absolutely, Norma. When John Laurinaitis says in right there, that is the quote right there. He says that it's a misguided complaint. However, it then says in the second quote, count how many times in the complaint Vince exerts control over both of them. It contradicts itself in the quote. It says it's a misguided complaint. It's not. You can argue that he's saying this isn't the full truth. I'm innocent, which is what he's saying. I was a victim in this situation as well. But absolutely, in that second one, it says read the complaint. We just read the complaint, and it sounds freaking horrific, and it doesn't look good for John Laurinaitis. It doesn't, in my opinion. What do you guys think? Hey. Let's leave Laurinaitis up there here. Let's have a look. What else are people saying? In his defense, if his defense is that he is a victim, he shouldn't be attacking her. What he's doing is he's using elements of what she said for his benefits and throwing the rest of it away is what I suggest, Norma. So what he's saying is read this, read it from my eyes, which we have just done with this new sort of quotes, this new, when Laurinaitis said this, we've reread the document, okay? We've done exactly what he said. And actually, he is a predator in certain situations. If he was alone with Miss Grant, as is established in the allegations, then he was a predator. He at that point could have said no. He could have said no. The threesomes with McMahon, a different story. If that was all it was, but it wasn't. It wasn't at all. There was times in this allegation where they were alone together. And does one of Vince's texts say about breakfast? Yes, it does. Here we go. Let's get this back up, guys. Sorry, we'll get rid of John. As I hope WWE will. It says right here in the text, that said, have you talked about breakfast? Have you and Johnny talked about breakfast tomorrow? In these messages from Vince. So you could argue, a court could argue, or Laurinaitis' lawyers could argue, the breakfast stuff didn't happen. But then we have evidence right there from Vince saying, have you talked about breakfast tomorrow? And Ms. Grant implying that breakfast meant the sexual activity. Is there anything else in any of the texts that mention the breakfast? Let's have a look. No, it makes total sense. It talks about the times with Johnny. Interesting that this one's blocked out. Baby, he's not the only one. Someone called me this afternoon begging to eat you and F you. This might be someone else that's mentioned earlier on in the case, like the physical therapist, for example, or someone else. It might not just be Laurinaitis, so we can't assume that. That's probably why it's blacked out. The physical therapist is never named in the document. It's just Laurinaitis, Vince, and WWE. She doesn't even mention, although we all sort of know it is Brock Lesnar. They don't mention Brock Lesnar by name in this. She's not actually going against Brock Lesnar. We all just know that it is Brock Lesnar based on the fact that he won the title. Any more text messages that suggest it? Here's what I said. Right, so this is about the Brock Lesnar booking it. So no, not against Laurinaitis. Okay, interesting. Sorry. I just want to sort of look into this with as open eyes as possible. And it's great to get your comments to get me questioning it more, I guess. Thank you, Norma. I'm excited for Rock versus Roman. We're not really going to talk wrestling here, Fox. I appreciate it, dude. But we're talking about the case now. There's plenty of other content. They did a great stream earlier about the Rock and Roman at Mania, my friend. Folks, again, there is a trigger warning in this stream. Viewer discretion is advised. I really appreciate it, Matt. Thank you for reminding people. It is at the bottom of the stream all the time. It's very important. I'm going into the documents. It's horrific, the allegations that is being said. So thank you, Mark. I appreciate it, man. Hey, Daniel, thanks for joining us, mate. I appreciate it. A bizarre defense to claim being a victim while creating a victim through your own actions. Absolutely. It's contradictory at times, but even in the two statements that the lawyer said, they were contradictory, as we just said. It's basically saying, read this through the eyes of Laurinaitis for the bits that we want you to and ignore the rest of it. It's mental. The two are not necessarily mutual, but Johnny Ace releasing this statement through his lawyer is quite frankly gross. I don't know if it's damage control. I don't know if it's a message to WWE. I think it's Laurinaitis wanting a silent settlement from Vince and WWE. I think he's trying to. He's playing. His defense is that he's the victim, and actually, I don't think he is the victim in certain situations if he was by himself. My opinion. If the allegations are true, he's in a lot of trouble. He certainly is. Oh, guys, go support Wrestling Royalty. They're a great channel. They've got lots of YouTube videos. We've just done a video with them on The Rock and stuff. So go give them a subscribe. It really helps us out. Yes, he is in a lot of trouble. However, he's trying to worm his way out of it by saying he was a victim too. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays if it goes to court. And after this, there is more chance of it going to court. That's the other truth. It's actually potentially put McMahon on the back foot. Whilst McMahon said in his statement, "I'm going to defend myself in court, and we're going to see this in court." Laurinaitis saying that he's going to defend it in court means that at least one of the three parties that Janel Grant has described in her lawsuit is wanting to take that to court. Vince, I would assume, would want to pay it to shut it up so that no other details come out. I would assume. Unless he does want to fight it as innocent. But when you've got them bloody text messages, how do you do it? So he's saying he is guilty of some of the charges, but he was only following orders. Absolutely. That's the mad thing about this. He is saying that some of this is true. His arguments in court will be the story he wants to portray is true. But he is saying in this statement, some of this is true and he's a victim. He's saying, read the complaint. Read the complaint from this point of view, which I have to be perfectly fair. I didn't read the complaint in the first way with that in mind. It wasn't until we heard that I go back and actually reread the complaint, because that's what you have to do when somebody has a defense. You have to say, okay, so does this corroborate? And I'd say there's parts of it that do, in terms of the way they were put together, in terms of the threesomes with Vince McMahon. The point where it all breaks down is on the one-on-one encounters, because at that point, he should have said no. And there's a lot of stuff that's not said in these allegations. It doesn't say what was happening. It says that he was forcibly touching her in the office. That's the one thing it does say in section 183. Okay. And the texts by Vince are very damaging. They certainly are. They certainly are. And the reason they're in this case, Sam, the reason they've been put in this civil action lawsuit is because they know that they've got more than that. They have more than that. There are more texts. There is more evidence to come out. This isn't about evidence right now. This is an allegation. However, they've put just enough evidence in to say, if you don't put that evidence in, it is just a story. It is a one-person story. But now we can look at that evidence. And yes, it hasn't been submitted at evidence yet, but text messages are very easy to get authenticated by phone networks. So they can go to the phone networks and say, did these texts happen? They say yes, and then suddenly you can use it in a court of law. So they know that the lawyers writing for Janel Grant have hit a slam dunk by putting them in, because they know that can be proved. And what they're saying is, this is serious. We've got this on you. Who knows what else they've got, but they've got stuff that they're putting in a report that's released to the world at this point. From a timing perspective, he's moved before any trial, which seems ill-advised. Miss Grant should have been allowed to speak her truth first, followed by a legal process. Interesting. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. I suspect that by doing this, I think Miss Grant's team will be celebrating, because one of the complainants is complaining about the other complainant. So instead of it being Miss Grant going against three, there's someone in that courtroom, according to the lawyers. I think now it might change. The defense might change as well. Just because he said that to the media, it doesn't mean that has to be the defense that they end up using. However, what they've indicated is that they're going to corroborate some of that story. Maybe it's a bad move on his part, but I'd assume Miss Grant's lawyers are going, okay, this has got a hell of a lot more complicated, but somebody named within this lawsuit is going to say that parts of this happened. And if you can prove parts of it beyond reasonable doubt, and it's a civil law case, so I think there's because it's not a county court at the minute, so there's less of a burden of proof based on the type of case it is at the minute. It's I think the wording is something along the lines of, and I'm not a lawyer, so, and I don't have it in front of me. It's something along the lines of there's beyond reasonable doubt of something happening, but in this type of case, it can be there's enough evidence to say that it could have happened. Okay, is the way I understand it. Not a lawyer. I'm going to be honest, he's pretty much landed himself in it as well. He has. But if he can get out of elements of this by this defense, then he will. And Laurinaitis, the other thing, Mark, is the other reason he might have done this is because he knows that there's evidence against him that's going to be brought up in court. So how do you get out of it? You know? If you're Deanna, welcome, and thank you all so much for joining me. This is a really difficult topic to talk about, but I appreciate you all being here to sort of engage in this content. If you're a Vince right-hand man, you knew what was going on. If you didn't stop it, you are part of the problem. I 100% agree, Deanna. Anyone that doesn't speak up when this is happening is wrong. It is not worth jobs, money, all of that sort of stuff. When you see something that is illegal happening in front of you, it is not right to stay silent about that. It isn't right. And I understand the pressures and I understand the financial pressures, but money is not that important to being a bloody decent human being. The precedence has been set by juries many times. After the first no, it is all a crime. Absolutely. I suspect his defense will go in and say this part isn't true. That might have happened, but he wasn't involved. They are going to say that the threesomes earlier are true. And then it'll be down to an evidence thing. It'll be down to discussion and based on who the juries believe. But yeah, absolutely. After the first no, it is a crime. It's rape. He's pretty much asking to be paid off to keep his mouth quiet. I think so. I think that's a huge part of it. I think he's been fired from the WWE, and this is just my opinion. He's been fired from the WWE, and he took the blame for that the first time. Vince came back. Don't forget, last year when Vince left, Vince was the one that came back. He's after blood. He's going after Vince because he can now, and he wants Vince to pay him to keep quiet. What he's basically said in that article is, I'm going to corroborate some of this story. Does that make sense? He likely admit to the affair, but say it was consensual. He can play dumb about trafficking. The question is, will that defense fly? Absolutely, Sam. A really great point. I think that's exactly what he will do. But I think he'll also say, I think the other thing will be Vince McMahon made me do it. You know, in the early parts of this allegation, we was talking about how it could be that his defense has legs. The meeting was set up between McMahon and Laurinaitis and Miss Grant. It was all gone through McMahon, so McMahon was the puppet master. And that's why the lawyers, John Laurinaitis' lawyers, are saying read that, because that part of it actually does read like that if you read it from that point of view. And then it's up to a jury to participate. If you choose to participate, you are part of the problem. Johnny, you could have walked away. Deanna, I absolutely agree with them words. Absolutely. You should have walked away. He didn't. Do you know what? No job is worth making someone else's life crap. When someone says no, that means they don't want something. No job is worth that. Can a deal be made between Mr. Laurinaitis and Miss Grant, or am I going on the complete wrong tracks? No, what it is a settlement can be made. Sorry, in terms of Mr. Laurinaitis and Miss Grant, their lawyers could absolutely be talking together. That part of the reason they went to Vice would be reach out. We want to have this discussion. We are willing to corroborate part of the story. We want you to take out this part of the story. And while you can't necessarily take it out, in theory, if there was to come to an arrangement that they wanted to have, they shouldn't, but they could orchestrate it so that it becomes more about Vince and less about Laurinaitis? I don't know. It could absolutely, and that could be why they went to Vice. That could be why they went to Vice and said, "We'll defend ourselves." But part of what Miss Grant is saying is right. She wouldn't need to. Sorry, I don't know which part we are on to. That. Oh, what she wouldn't need to make a deal with Mr. Laurinaitis. It depends on the amount of evidence that she's got in the case. It depends on how strong they actually feel her case is going to court. And even if a settlement is to be made, when they go behind closed doors to discuss a settlement prior to going to court, if they were to have Laurinaitis with Miss Grant there saying, no, Vince, I'm saying this part is true, that can up the value of that settlement. So at the minute, if it was Laurinaitis, Vince, and WWE all against Miss Grant, they'd go in there on a united front. What this has done is said, we're not going in on a united front. In a civil case in the US, at least, the burden of proof is that more likely than not it happened. Thank you, Norma. That is what I was trying to get at. Yes, it is more likely than not. It is not beyond reasonable doubt. And that's a huge distinction. In my opinion, and it is my opinion, the case itself reads more likely than not. The allegations themselves read more likely than not, partly based on the evidence in there. However, Vince McMahon, WWE, and Laurinaitis have not had an opportunity to defend themselves yet. And we don't know what their defense is going to be. We've had an inclination into what Laurinaitis' defense is going to be. I have a massive feeling either Steph or Shane knew about it or found out and was like, yeah, we're out of here. Really great point, Mark. It's something that's been talked about a lot. I mean, Stephanie was put in charge when Vince was out and investigations were going on. We don't know how much Steph had to do with them investigations. We don't know if Miss Janel Grant later on in this document says that she wasn't approached about the investigations. There is someone in WWE staff who has reported that she was asked to be part of the investigation. So once again, people, that's what any case happens. You know, this person says this person says the other, and then you argue it and you find out where the truth lies. Okay. And sometimes the truth lies in neither. Sometimes the truth lies in confusion, you know. David Made Alive. Thank you so much for joining us, Dave. I appreciate it. Hope you're doing well, my dude. Steph or Shane? Shane's the other one because Shane was out of the company. There's been a lot of reports about potentially Shane knew what was going on, didn't like it, tried to stop and all that sort of stuff. I don't know. It's his father we're talking about as well. I'm mad they're treating Vince like Chris Benoit. Well, he's not guilty yet. In a lot of respects, if the allegations are true, he is a monster like Benoit. I think the thing that Benoit had in his defense was the head trauma. The head trauma and concussion is the defense of why he did what he did. I don't know what Vince's defense is yet. And medically, you know, that's a concussion. That's why concussion protocol come in and stuff like that. Yeah, I think they'll delete Vince. But the problem is Vince is more rooted in WWE than Chris Benoit ever will be. Ever. Pretty much, if I'm going down, I'm taking you all with me. Absolutely. I think I am going to do them quotes as a separate video. So stay tuned for that maybe tomorrow. I'll sort of read through the quotes there. We might go live tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. Pretty much, if I'm going down, I'm taking you all with me. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. That's what it sounds like to me. Mark, Steph knew something had happened. I doubt she knew the details, though. Obviously, she may have known the details. She may have been part of the investigation. She might have jumped ship. Not for me. Not for me. Gone. But then her husband is still working behind there. One of the things, and I will talk about this more tomorrow because we are talking about Laurinaitis, is Triple H during the press scrum, man. Oh, what was he that he said? That really upset me. Oh, Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics asked if Triple H if he'd read the lawsuit. Triple H said, "I did not. I did not." So, a huge lawsuit that's only 67 pages. It's not huge, but it's damaging to the company. Triple H, you might not have read it, but you were certainly bloody briefed about it. You were certainly briefed about it. If nothing else, I think he handled that press scrum really badly. But maybe we'll talk about that more tomorrow when we get into that a bit more. So come and hang out for tomorrow. Jake Holden, that's what I kind of meant, but didn't know how to word it. That is about the Steph thing. Yeah, no, that's all good, man. That's all good. It's interesting, mate. We can absolutely disagree in chat, and that's cool. That's fine. David's upset that they're treating Vince like Chris Benoit. I'd say if he is this monster, that's fine. We can have a disagreement. That's cool. A jury, if this goes to court, will be me and you having these debates in their when they go to what's the word, mate? I'm not a lawyer. When they have consultation, can't think of the word. Someone will come up with it. Let's go. Pretty much, if I'm going down, I'm taking you all with me. You never know. This is crazy. I absolutely agree. It certainly is, man. It certainly is. And I appreciate you being here, David. And I appreciate your opinion for sure. Mark LFC UK, yeah, for sure. I've just seen some people say Steph knew everything. I doubt that, but pretty sure she knew Vince was doing sketchy stuff involving women, so got out. I don't know about Shane, though. Yeah, the whole thing about Steph and a lot of the media that is reporting it is speculating. In a sense, we're only speculating now as well. And I think that's okay to do because that's part of what a jury will do. They're going to hear two people arguing against each other and they're going to figure out the parts in between and then come up with a verdict based on that. I don't see any evidence in this court case saying that Steph knew everything. There's several, who are the people named in the lawsuit? I can't remember the names. There's how do they describe them? They describe them as, WWE Corporate Officer number 1, Corporate Officer number 2, WWE Corporate Officer number 3, WWE Corporate Officer number 4. We don't know who these people are yet. One of them, and this is, again, I'm speculating. One of them could be Stephanie. I don't know. There's nothing to it. One of them could be Triple H. One of them could be Shane McMahon. One of them could be Bruce Pritchard. They're not named in the case, but we don't know who they are. We know some of the jobs they do, but we don't know the full jobs of people within the company, especially the chairwoman, the chairman, what have you, chairperson. There we go. Could be, and so WWE won't want this going to trial because them corporate officers at that point are going to be named. Steph 100% new though. Interesting. Yeah. I think that's probably why she jumped ship. But again, I'd be speculating. Even though Vince may have threatened Johnny, your morals should not take over when we are talking about something like this. Absolutely, man. You need to stand firm, and you need to ensure that this sort of crap doesn't happen in the world. You report it to someone, you sort it out. Yes, Vince is powerful, but guess what? Money ain't worth this sort of awfulness. In the case, it talks about him showing the phone to multiple referees, to technicians. They all could have spoke. They all could have, not necessarily to Vince, not necessarily to anyone within the company. They probably felt trapped, just as Janel Grant did. However, they could have gone outside of that, outside of the law, and said, "Police, I think that this is happening." Hell, there's so many people that talk to dirt sheets within WWE. Give Dave Meltzer his sort of his knowledge. How about instead of talking to Dave Meltzer, you give the bloody police a call? Give the police a call. This is happening in my workplace. I think this person is being trafficked. This isn't right. However, we don't know what those people were shown or told by Vince as well. So we have to respect that as well. But what I would say is Laurinaitis was certainly implied that he knew more. When she said no, she should have said no. The court could offer him a deal to flip on Vince. The court could offer him a deal to flip on Vince. If it was I'm not a lawyer. In a legal case, I think that would be the case, but this is a civil case, so I don't know if it would. That would be more if it was a legal case, I believe, Sam. Someone else can probably clarify that for me. Sorry, I can't answer that. At the minute, this is a civil case, not a criminal case yet. The EJ and Kawa case could do much to inform this one in terms of how civil cases work. I don't know that case, my dude. I don't know that case, my friend. It is something that I am interested in looking up, so thank you for pointing it out to me. I believe it's true that you can be guilty and in the wrong, but the victim at the same time. Absolutely. Of course you can. And that's what I believe is happening with John here. He's guilty, but also a victim. Really interesting point, Jake. And a point that a lot of people would be afraid to share. I believe that that's his defense. That's his defense. Whether he believes it or not, that is his defense. And if that's how he justifies what he did, then that's how he justifies. You're right. It was wrong. If this stuff occurred, it was wrong. But in his mind, that's how he's justified it. I had to impress Vince. I had to impress Vince. I had to keep this job to support my family, to support my lifestyle. Absolutely right. We all justify the things we do to ourselves anyway, you know. So he'll have been justifying while he was doing this, and that's his justification, or that's his defense. Because this involves the lawsuit, can Matt Caster stop making raps involving Vince? Like, it's just getting creepy. He did it again on a live event, and he's getting massive heat for him. Right. Well, you know, this is part of the reason I made these videos in the first place, because I was watching other wrestling outlets talk about it in a really sort of censored way, I guess, is how I describe it. And I went, no, let's talk about the realities of it, right? Let's not mess about. Let's get the court work out. Let's have a look at it, and let's discuss it properly. Yeah, Max Caster, you shouldn't be making jokes of it. Look at how much heat Jim Cornette got for the video that he released. When they first reacted to it, they were laughing about it. They were joking about how ridiculous it was, about how he you know, when he defecated on someone's forehead. Not the way I'd like to necessarily handle it at all, but that's the way they handled it, and they've had to apologize because they got a lot of backlash for that. They got a lot of, but they did apologize, so good for them. I think it was overwhelmingly shocking to them at the time as well. I think there's a part of that. It's just so outrageous. You know, when we first read this, there was a lot of people in comments saying it reads like a horror story, and it does. And it can either scare you, or some people deal with it in humor and stuff like that. Some people want to focus on that, of the absurdity of it all, the fact that, but this is a woman's life, you know, and that's how I choose to approach it. But other people may approach it differently, and that's up to them. She certainly knew the allegations. Stephanie McMahon knew the allegations. I don't know that we can say that with certainty, my friend. We can assume she knew the allegations. At no point has Miss Grant said she spoke to Stephanie and said, this is what's happening with your dad. We can assume if she was in charge when this investigation was going on, and people within the office, which is implied within this, knew about the relationship between Janel Grant and Vince McMahon, that she knew about Janel Grant and the relationship with the father. Whether she knew how dark it was or not, we can't say, I don't think, without certainty, or there's certain, unless you can find me something that says it, there is. from the previous time the story broke. Yeah, but her reaction was to walk away. I don't think she knew the depth of it, because Janel Grant says that she wasn't asked for an interview in them investigations later on in the case, I'd say. He made the wrong decision about joining in with Vince for his job, and very, very in the wrong and evil, but he was also a victim of Vince too. That's his defense. Yeah. He was absolutely wrong. But what he's saying is, I was forced to do this. Probably he'll argue financial implications, as well as his work, I would assume, which is kind of the allegations that Ms. Grant is making against Vince as well. So that is where his defense will come on. Again, you're right though, Jake. He was wrong to do it. If this goes to court, it'll depend how the court find him. Guilty or not, the accusations are horrendous. Deanna, absolutely, they are horrendous. They're, no means no. No means no, under any circumstances. And actually, the grooming of a vulnerable woman, which we've not really talked about. We talked about that a lot in the last episode I did last week, the live, where we went through the full court case. The accusations are horrific, and it's that preying on, grooming on a vulnerable adult, which really makes me sad. In terms of kink and stuff like that, that doesn't sort of bother me if it's consenting adults. I have no issue with that. From the case that's written, it wasn't consenting, and that's a problem. That's a huge problem. And anytime it's not consenting, it's horrendous. We should all give each other the space to be who we want to be. Okay. When I say no, it means no. Difference between Vince and Benoit is Benoit couldn't defend himself because he passed. I doubt he is, but he could be innocent. Vince actually gets an unfair chance, gets a chance to defend himself, unlike Chris. Yes, if you do. Well, in Vince McMahon's statement, Vince McMahon says he is going to. The lawsuit is replete with lies, obscene, made-up instances that never occurred, and is a vindictive distortion of the truth. I intend to vigorously defend myself against these baseless accusations. That was before these Laurinaitis things come out, and I tell you what, that might change everything. And that's why, when that come out, I wanted to make an episode sort of dedicated to talking about that, because I wanted to go through what he was saying in Vice and actually read it with the victim of Laurinaitis in mind, because I have to say, when I read that, I did not, and their lawyer told us in the victims in the Vice interview, he actually said, Mr. Laurinaitis is a victim in the case, not a predator. The truth will come out. And it says, count how many times in the complaint Vince exerts control over both of them. At this point, he was saying there are elements of this complaint which are true. He is standing with Ms. Janel Grant on the plaintiff on certain elements of this. I'd assume he's going to deny other parts of it, as we sort of read earlier on in this sort of breakdown. Hi, Dom. How are you doing, man? Thanks for joining us, mate. Finished work, boom. Danny, glad you finished work, mate. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for joining us. Guys, I know this is horrific video and content and stuff like that. It's horrific to talk about. If you'd like the video, it really helps us out. The last video got a lot of traction, a lot of people talking about it, and I'm hoping that people appreciate the way that we're trying to cover it on this channel, which is to sort of look at it from a sort of from actually sort of reading the paperwork. I hope you appreciate that. If the accusations are true, which I believe they probably is a lot of truth to it, Vince is an evil person and does seem like the type of guy to pressure someone with a job to get them to join in. There's been other people that have come out with accusations of that. One of the interesting ones that I heard recently, and again, I think tomorrow night we'll do another live stream about, but we'll base it around people's reactions in media. So check that out tomorrow. Turn on notifications for that. One of the things that is interesting about this was a story from Dutch Mantel, I think it was, who was talking about him sat there with Pat Patterson and Vince McMahon in his garden with a milk bone with a dog, and the dog's frothing at the mouth, and Vince McMahon's teasing it and giving it the bone and then pulling it away, and giving it the bone and then pulling it away. And it was Pat that said, "No, give him the bone now. Give him the bone. That's enough." Pat, I think it was Pat, had said to Dutch afterwards, "That's how Vince treats his wrestlers. Okay, that's how Vince treats his staff." A really interesting sort of analogy. From the previous time. Thank you. Miss Grant's lawyers have already said they have received many other victims' story. They absolutely have. In saying that, in Miss Grant's lawyers saying that, they are probably scaring WWE even more. Because if it's not just this case, which is freaking horrific enough, if it's not just this case, what other stories are going to come out? And I think they're going to do everything they can to stop it. However, Vince McMahon said he intends to vigorously defend himself against these baseless accusations. Sounds like the lawyers have a lot more accusations that they might be ready to throw out towards Vince. So we'll see what happens there. Perhaps not the scale. What in terms of the other people was, again, I disagree. Miss Grant's payoff was $3 million. That's what they agreed to on the NDA, and we talked more about how the NDA can be invalid because of Vince not paying it in the second time. He paid $7 million to someone. Does that mean that the $7 million is more horrific? I don't know. It was more money to keep it quiet, is what I'd say. I believe Johnny deserves a big, heavy punishment as well. Should definitely not be let off. Jake, I agree, man. If these are true, whether he was a victim or not, he did wrong. He did absolute wrong, my friend. I hope this goes to a legal battle instead of just a civil case. Who knows how it's going to be? But even in a civil case, it can end with a huge hit to Vince McMahon, to WWE, to Laurinaitis. Danny, if you're still here, I know you know more about the Trump trial than I do, but didn't that settle at $80 million? And the accusations in that case were as horrific as what's been alleged here. I believe it was $80 million it set out for. Someone can confirm that for me. This could be worse. This could be worse, especially if other people are now involved. I feel like the Chris Benoit comment. Chris Benoit basically admitted guilt by committing suicide. Okay, as his actions in murdering his wife and son, don't think anyone would even consider ever forgiving him. Great point, Danny. He took his life. I think he knew what he was doing wrong. But I think the argument would be, if I was to be someone who was to look at the Chris Benoit case, and I was to say, well, the concussions were what led him to have to do this. His brain damage is what led him to do the horrific things that he did to his wife and son. I think that'd be people's arguments, I think. Danny Green says settled at $83 million and nowhere near what is accused against Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Thank you, Danny. Thank you. It's important, man. It's important to sort of to put that into perspective. That's how much the Donald Trump case settled for. That's just happened. $83 million, and not as bad as the allegations we have right now. Nothing's gone to court yet. No other details have come out yet. And $83 million. And I believe WWE's got more money than Trump. Is that a true statement? I have no idea, actually. I can't make that statement. So juries punish companies and people for for this type of misconduct. Look at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in the Maya Kowalski case. Her mum ended up, she was taken into the hospital. She was kept against her will and against her mother's will. Her mum ended up committing suicide because it was terrible. The court ended up going in the side of Maya Kowalski, and the Johns Hopkins Hospital was fined $225 million. I think jurors are wanting to make an example when bad business practice is taking place, and that was certainly the case in the Maya Kowalski case. When things are not done fairly, wanting to make examples of these big companies to ensure that it doesn't happen again. And this is very damning allegations to McMahon, Laurinaitis, and WWE. How do you know Chris did commit suicide? He may have been forced to shoot himself or being killed by someone else. I think he did, didn't he? I thought I haven't looked at it for a while, but I believe he hung himself on the on part of his workout equipment off the top of my head. But again, without sort of going back into that, I'd have to thingy. Danny, I believe Benoit is guilty, but there is a chance he may never have ended his life. I don't know, because I don't know. You'd have to look at the coroner's report and stuff like that. It's probably in that episode of Dark Side of the Ring, actually, to be perfectly honest, which is a great watch as well, guys. The Dark Side of the Ring. There could be a whole season on Vince McMahon after this, I think, or he may have been forced to. Tyson Fury's joined us. Hi, mate. How are you doing? Danny Green, I believe Benoit was innocent and staged to look like it was what you believe it was. Interesting. Sorry, guys, without sort of looking into that case again, I can't really comment on it on this point of view. The case that I have in front of me is the Janel Grant and WWE, so I can't really speculate on that. Does that make sense? Remember some of the storylines in the Double O's when he'd have Linda in some kind of vegetative state and he's parading himself with an attractive female by his side. Feel like this was a fantasy of his. My friend, there's a lot of memes going around with Vince McMahon right now, and taking them early 2000s, the late 90s Vince McMahon. It's very easy to make some memes that make complete sense under this circumstance and under these allegations. What aspect is Miss Grant aiming at WWE as a company? Facilitating unsafe working conditions? Absolutely. That is absolutely part of it, yeah. They are named several times. Let me get to the end of the lawsuit. Excuse me, sorry, there's a lot there. Also that it wasn't... sorry, let's get it back on for you, Andy. There we go. McMahon controlled WWE during Miss Grant's employment. So by saying that he was part of the company while it was McMahon doing that, he was enacting that at the WWE and facilitating that within the office, which creates a culture of a bad culture within the workplace. A big part of it. The company knew, is what it says, but did nothing about McMahon's exploit of Miss Grant. So 241 is detailed herein. WWE knew of McMahon's illegal conduct and did nothing to stop it. This is self-evident from the numerous executive level and board members who were privy to McMahon's involvement with Miss Grant, as well as his prior incidents involving sexual misconduct, which is coming out more now. For instance, in or around March 2021, Miss Grant introduced herself to WWE corporate officer number 1, who's still not named. When they passed one another in a hallway, the corporate officer responded by telling Miss Grant that the corporate officer number 1 knew exactly who she was, indicating that she knew that she was in a relationship with Vince McMahon. Vince maintained an office suite on the executive 4th floor on WWE company headquarters. Meanwhile, Miss Grant's cubicle in the company's legal department was in a different building and across the street from corporate officer number 1. So saying that he wouldn't have known about the relationship without being told by Vince, knowing that not necessarily by Vince, you can't assume that. Basically saying that the company knew, that this company officer knew. Miss Grant had no physical presence until she began to report to an attorney who kept in an office at birth. Given that corporate officer number 1 is a high-ranking WWE officer, we don't know who that is. Mate, there's names thrown out there. That could be Bruce Pritchard. It could have been Stephanie McMahon at the time. It could have been Triple H. Yeah, it could have been any of them. It could have been more. It could be Nick Khan. It could be Kevin Dunn. It could be Bruce Pritchard. Right? All high-ranking WWE officers. It could be someone completely different. There's a lot that's not known, but there's also, if this goes to court, then them names will be revealed in court. Whether it be revealed outside of court is a different matter. But they will be given an opportunity to defend themselves, present evidence as corporate officer number 1. Did corporate officer number 1 who know who she was? How did she know who she was? How did she know that she was in a relationship with Vince McMahon? That can all be questioned in court. Given that WWE corporate are very high-ranking, and Miss Grant was an entry-level coordinator, it's unusual that corporate officer number 1 knew who she was at all at that point, except that he knew about it because of the exploitations of Miss Grant by McMahon. Following Miss Grant's messages to McMahon on March 9th, Miss Grant, let me just read through this a little bit and we'll see. As McMahon had met privately with WWE corporate officer number 1 and corporate officer number 2 and advised these individuals of McMahon's connection to Miss Grant. So saying that part of the reason that she got the job and part of the reason that she was kept safe within the job was because McMahon had revealed that he was in this relationship with her, which again, from a company point of view, is wrong. McMahon continued this conversation by detailing to Miss Grant that they expressed concern but were ultimately supportive. McMahon had also advised that Miss Grant that one or both of the officers inquired whether Miss Grant could be trusted, and McMahon offered assurances that Miss Grant would not do anything to hurt WWE. It's hurting something now. Knowledge on the part of WWE is further illustrated by the multiple meetings Miss Grant had about initial hearing and subsequent position changes, including a number of meetings with corporate officer number 2 and a voice memo McMahon sent Miss Grant the following morning on March 10th, mentioning the names of both corporate officers in connection to the new role. That voice memo could be something that they have in evidence, which is why they're mentioning it right there. Could absolutely be something that I have in evidence, Miss Grant's lawyers. It's unusual for the executive chairman and CEO to name drop 2 of the company's highest ranking officials in connection with the coordinator's first job promotion, especially as there are human resources partners assigned to each development. Also, corporate officer number 4 was a high ranking legal department employee at WWE until around November 2020. Upon information and belief, number 4 was terminated or asked to resign from WWE's corporate officer post. McMahon expressed to Miss Grant that corporate officer 4, while still employed at WWE, knew or suspected that a sexual relationship existed between them. Upon information and belief, corporate officer number 4 articulated WWE's officer number 4 knowledge and or suspicion to at least one other executive. There's also complaints within it that Vince was showing the footage of him and Miss Grant to several referees, technicians. The fact that Laurinaitis is involved in this and was a high-ranking official that never reported it and instead partook in the alleged abuse of Miss Grant as well could be why they're going after WWE, because this sort of system shouldn't exist within a company and there should be ways for people to not feel trapped by this. What we're saying is that too much power in WWE. Knowledge on the part of WWE is further illustrated by the fact that Miss Grant's presence became more visible over time, including during executive committee meetings, which were attended by individuals who had either direct knowledge of McMahon's sexual exploitation of Miss Grant or were otherwise suspicious. Given Miss Grant's length of employment and job title, it was an abnormal sign of different and special treatment for her to attend such meetings, especially when the executive head of the department, Laurinaitis, was in attendance as well. Notably, Miss Grant inquired corporate officer number 1 and number 2 about whether it was appropriate for her to attend these meetings. So she was questioning why she should attend these meetings. Corporate officer number 3, another high-ranking official and board of directors at the time, motioned for Miss Grant to sit in a chair near officer number 3 in the board table. But upon information and belief, WWE Corporate Officer Number 3 knew of other instances of McMahon engaging in inappropriate sexual conduct. Upon information and belief, numerous independent contractors, employees, this is what we're talking about with the referees and the technicians that were mentioned of Vince showing, knew of it, suspected McMahon's misconduct involving Miss Grant, including being shown explicit photos of Miss Grant by Miss McMahon. McMahon directed a single attorney to negotiate the NDA on behalf of WWE and McMahon, both parties to the agreement. McMahon's abuse of Miss Grant did not come as a surprise to anyone at WWE because he'd faced numerous accusations of sexual misconduct, talking about Rita Chatterton there within the thing, the lady at the spa, the tanning booth where he'd groped her, which is another complaint, the spa manager at the California resort in 2011. To further illustrate knowledge of the culture of sexual misconduct at WWE, top-level executives not only failed to properly investigate abuse, but also compounded Miss Grant's suffering by making public statements and trivialize the harm perpetrated upon her. These are just a few examples of how WWE and its most senior officials knew about and fostered a culture where the venture of harassment and sexual exploitation of women was tolerated to further the business and financial interests of WWE. Don't forget, Miss Grant's accusations as well also say that she was used as part of the negotiation terms to get the WWE superstar, which we assume is Brock Lesnar. She was used as part of the negotiation tactics within that. Given, among other things, the history of misconduct involving other women, the notice provided by McMahon to senior leadership at WWE, rumors about the relationship within WWE headquarters, the widespread sharing of Miss Grant's pictures, including her face, to those inside the company by McMahon, the atypical hiring of Miss Grant, and the atypical advancement of Miss Grant within WWE, WWE clearly knew of McMahon's misconduct involving Miss Grant and or recklessly disregarding the facts available to them. Hopefully that answered your question. Sorry that took a while, but it's important to sort of go into them facts, and so there you go. That's exactly why she's going at WWE, saying that it failed to protect her under them circumstances. You can say Vince was in charge of WWE, and he absolutely was, but it's still wrong that the company didn't, because that was owned by Vince McMahon at the time. WWE has more money than Trump. Trump has more money than Vince, though. There we go. Thank you, Jake. Cheers, man. I'd love to know them the numbers. If you can get the numbers. I don't know how you do that. Maybe you can have a search for me, Jake. At least net worth-wise. Yeah, I'd be interested, man. If you get us some numbers, Jake, throw them in chat. Danny, how did you know he did delete himself? How do you know he wasn't forced by an intruder? Benoit hung himself and nothing was ever said about there being intruders, or at least I don't recall there being intruders involved. I suppose Jake is saying, how do you know that he wasn't forced to do it by an intruder? And we don't. Ultimately, we don't, and we can't. Unless there was physical evidence that corroborated that, which I don't know that there was or wasn't. I don't know if it's just a story. I don't know what evidence is on it. Like I say, I'm not following that case at the moment to sort of be able to comment on it, mate. Yeah, can we not bring up Chris Benoit like this? It has nothing to do with it. It doesn't, which is why we can't really sort of get into it, guys. So I don't know how much more Vince McMahon stuff goes on, but please, it's a completely different case. Much like we're not talking about Roman versus The Rock at WrestleMania this year in this video. Okay, completely understandable. Thanks for that, Mark. Thanks, Jake. I believe Vince we saw on TV was very similar to his actual personality now looking back at it. Potentially, man. Potentially. There's elements of performers. A good performer knows how to bring elements of themselves to a performance. Yeah. Emotional recall. And the reason that actors can cry over something like a slice of bread that's been is they're able to recall stuff in the mind and put themselves in that situation and turn it on and turn it off. It's all part of performance. Leo Taylor, welcome to the channel, my dude. Thank you for joining us. Didn't Johnny Ace learn you can look, but you can't touch? Well, his daughters certainly should have told him that. Daughter-in-laws. Let's get it right. I have a feeling it was Kevin Dunn, but that's complete speculation. It is complete speculation. We don't know who the corporate officers are, But it could have been any number of these. And that's why I had a real issue with what Triple H was saying. Because there's several people that are not named in this that could be people he worked with closely and stuff like this. But we'll talk about that more in tomorrow's stream when I do that. Danny, I remember a segment where Vincent Kennedy McMahon had Trish Stratus on all fours, backing around. Another segment where Lita was wrestling and got Crime Time to empty her suitcase. Yes, all horrific stuff that now, with the insight of these allegations, look a lot worse. And while we may have found it entertaining at the time, I think there was always a question of, is this right? Is this right? Probably not. Why are we seeing this? And actually, it's very difficult to go back and watch a lot of the Attitude Era stuff, especially with Jerry Lawler on commentary. In his defense, if his defense is physically assaulted a woman because he was afraid he was going to lose his job, which is probably what his defense is, according to what the lawyer has said to Vice, he's going to have a long day on the witness stand. Absolutely. Unless it gets settled out of court. And that payment might now also go to him as well. Exactly. It's not the best defense, which is why I believe he is telling the truth, which is also essentially means Vince is guilty too. That might absolutely be how Johnny is justifying it to himself. It doesn't mean it's right, as Jake says, but that might be how he's justifying it to himself, that he was in that position because he wanted to please Vince. But we should never do that at the expense of someone else. There seems more assumption and speculation involved against the company that will be harder to prove. Yes, depending on what they have, but also Vincent Kennedy McMahon was in charge of the company. It wouldn't be surprising to see WWE plead ignorance to the vast majority and rally against Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Whoa, if that happened, that'd be massive, man. That would be massive. You know, we're talking a lot about Laurinaitis in this episode, and this is massive because he's going against Vincent Kennedy McMahon and WWE. If WWE or TK Holdings was to go against Vince now, seriously, that would be massive. Welcome, Dan. Hope you're doing well, mate. Thanks for joining, my dude. I find it shocking how people are ready to believe anything alleged against Vince. I wonder why so many people don't want to let this go through the system before casting judgment. Mazek, thank you so much for that statement. I read what Vince hasn't defended himself yet at all. He hasn't defended himself. The only defense he's said is his statement, and we'll go into this more tomorrow, which was that it's obscene, made-up instances that never really occurred, a vindictive distortion of the truth. I intend to vigorously defend myself against these basic allegations and look forward to clearing my name. So that was Vince McMahon on the allegations. Here we have multiple text messages, which they would not have put. These are screenshots of text messages. They would not have put this unless they could corroborate them as evidence. If not, why would you put it in? You're going to look, if you went into court with these text messages that have Vince McMahon talking awfully to someone, then sorry, where's my train of thought? If they were made up, they wouldn't have put them in. These are as damning as a lot of the report that it sits on. Where's a bad one? Is this one bad? I've highlighted it, so it might be bad. I told him he could do anything with him. Where's the one where he tells her, oh yeah, she says, no, give me another week. I'm not feeling well at the minute. I need some time to get better. And he says, Johnny wants a Tuesdays. I've already told him that he can have you. It's manipulation. So interesting that I think the people are quick to throw belief in the allegations, but I also think there's a lot of evidence already supporting it, and we've not even got to the evidence part of the trial yet. So we'll see what happens, my dude. Thank you for joining, though. I wish I'd known you streaming. I just finished and would have sent people your way. Thank you, Dan. I'm going to do one tomorrow as well. yeah, I think it's important to talk about this stuff and talk about it in a proper way that involves looking at the allegations, looking at the court paperwork, not just talking about baseless speculation and rumor. We'll do that a little bit more tomorrow night when we talk about what people have sort of said on media outlets everywhere. Oh, you're doing this. Yikes. Yeah, this is harsh. It certainly is. The old I was following orders defense is a very poor history of success. It certainly does, man. It certainly does. And if that is his defense, that is thingy. Let's go back to Mazaya. The other thing is, man, John Laurinaitis, one of the people in this case has said that parts of this case are accurate. When he spoke to Vice, he said he denies the allegations in the misguided complaint. However, in the second statement by the lawyer, he said, count how many times in the complaint Vince exerts control over both of them. You can't throw out the complaint if he's saying, go to it and read how many times he exerts control over it. And that's what we did at the start of the episode, my dude. We looked at it through Laurinaitis' eyes. How can he be using this as a defense? Does this defense stand up according to the allegations? Because that's what his lawyer's telling us to do. Read the allegations, and then this is all the stuff that's around it, and then count how many the times in the complaint that Vince exerts control over them. There are times in this complaint where they could argue that Vince exerted control over John Laurinaitis. As we went in earlier over this in video, he talks about how the meeting between Laurinaitis and McMahon and Ms. Grant was all put together by Vince. You can argue, Laurinaitis can argue that that's how it happened. The one thing I've got an issue with, you can even argue the threesomes were done by pressure of Vince McMahon. He can argue that. That is his defense. What you can't argue, in my opinion, is the fact that she was serving herself as breakfast to him for obviously sexual behavior, but also where did we get about the 175? As soon as Miss Grant began working directly for Laurinaitis, forcibly touching and overtly sexual behaviors become part of the daily life when they was in the office. If Laurinaitis is saying Vince is guilty of this, but then at the same time, Laurinaitis is guilty because Vince wasn't there at them points. And always, no means no. And they should have backed up. Sorry to sort of think of you, but I want to tell you why I think this is Vince. There's alleged evidence pointing towards him. And now there's someone else who was actually named as part of the lawsuit to say, this guy's a prick. He reads out in the lawsuit as this guy's a prick. And now he's saying, I'm a victim as well. And that was the primary purpose of this video. But I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you for getting me to talk about it. And because that's how I'm feeling right now. That is my opinion. If you've got a different opinion, I'd love you to put forward your case as to why Vince didn't do this. If your argument is she's only in it for the money, let's have that argument. Let's discuss that argument. But right now, the only statement from Vince is, I am going to, let's get it up because, let's not mess about. I intend to vigorously defend myself against these baseless accusations. So if he intends to defend himself against these baseless accusations, then he'll be taking this to court. He won't even attempt a settlement out of court. Okay. Trump is worth $2.6 billion, but was worth nearly $5 billion a few years back. Vince is worth about $2 billion. WWE is worth $21 billion, I assume that is, with UFC. And without UFC, it's $7 billion. Wow. Big numbers there. And in the court case against Donald Trump that's just been settled, was it settled or did it go to court? I don't know enough about it. I'm not even going to try and speculate how it was. But the award was 80 million. Trump is worth about 2.6. Vince is worth about 2, so equivalent. WWE is worth 21 billion. I'm going to talk on this one, I think. Thanks. Yeah, that's cool. That's all good wrestling booking. Nice to see you, my dude. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Mosaic, it's the same with everyone, though. Allegations come out. The allegations get help against them forever, even after being found innocent, sadly. Yeah, everyone, the allegations come out. It's time for him to defend himself. I want to see him defend himself. If he has a defense for this, let's see him defend himself. Is there a scenario where Shane and Stephanie McMahon never return to WWE and Triple H is given a polite and respectful parting of ways with their close connections with Vincent Kennedy McMahon until things get settled? I think there could be a scenario in that, yeah. Once again, we don't know who Corporate Officer 1, 2, or 3 is at this point, okay? So there's, and I'm not saying it is them, I'm not saying it isn't them. There's certainly more stuff that can come out, is what I'd say. Depending on who knew what, I don't know. It could be. Absolutely could be. Until it's all set and up. Because TK, I don't want any more bad press coming towards them. And actually, we'll talk a bit tomorrow night about why I don't think Triple H did a very good job at that press conference as well. Danny Green, yes, but very sad scenarios. I believe Sean would take over them. Interesting. Sean could take over him. Bruce Pritchard could take over him. Also allegations. Also, it was an allegation from Ronda Rousey. Again, we'll talk about tomorrow. And the fact that she has lawyers willing to take this very high-profile case means they feel there is a big payday ahead. Yes, and from this coming out, more people have come forward and are talking about whether NDAs are still legal under the circumstances that they're put in. Because if Miss Grant gets this and they say that she entered the NDA unlawfully, then that could be the case for other people. Now, the Speak Out Act was put in by Biden, I think it was 2022 at the top of my head. That I don't know if that works for things past 2022 or whether it works for stuff before, but that's stuff that the legal system is going to have to iron out in time. I'll say this, nobody in the actual business who's been around a while are surprised. Like they wouldn't have known the specifics and details, but we all know stories about him. Thank you, Wrestling Booker. Indeed. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we all sort of, I don't think it, the shock of this story is from the horrificness of the story that's been told, the allegations that have been made. I think that's the sad part of it. That's the shocking part of it. Not necessarily that Vince was a predator assault. We've heard stories of the Rita Chatterton, of the spa manager in the past. So I don't think that that's the shock. The shock is the details in which this case highlights. I will reserve judgment until this plays out. Rock and roll, man. I find it reprehensible to cast judgment on other people. That's cool. That's good. That's good that you're a good person. Ultimately, though, when this goes to court, it will be a jury of people that decide. I will not argue if Vince is guilty or not, as I don't know. The only people who know are them. Yes, and they will get the chance to present their evidence, Mosaic. And I appreciate you being here, man. I really do. I'm sorry if I got heated earlier. I want to put my position on this case, you know, and say that there is part of evidence that we can read out now. There is allegations that are being made, and we can start to take elements of what a jury would, because they're going to be told the same story, and they're going to be shown the same evidence, and one would assume more, and we can decide. We can take that and say there's a reason to investigate this. Does that make sense? Trump's case went to court, $83 million sued for. Thank you, Danny. $83 million is what he ended up having to pay out. And once again, as Crazy Ginger Jake says, Trump is worth $2.6 billion. Vince is worth $2 billion. And the allegations against Vince or these allegations are more horrific than the allegations that were made against Trump, to what I'm aware of the case with Trump. I should really look into that case a lot more. Is there anything other than her word that she said no? Yes, there is, Norma. Great question. Let's go here. Let me have a look. We haven't discussed it at all, Johnny. No, not there. There is text messages where she implies that she can't do something, and Vince says it's happening. This one here, I'd say is partly her word saying no. He's not the only one. Someone called him begging to eat you and fuck you with his nice penis. She said, give me another week. She said no. Right there. Give me another week and I'll be ready. And part of what the court case goes into was that she learned that the way to handle Vince wasn't to say no outright, was to say, was to sandwich it, to put it between, so to lessen it by saying, if you give me time, we can, if you give me time, then I can feel, if you give me time, then we can do it in a week's time. And that was her way of lessening it. So she at that point says, no, give me another week, baby, and I'll be ready. Okay. So she might be saying she'll be ready in a week, but she is saying no at that point. Yeah. She is saying no. I read that as no. Let me know in chat if that means no. To me, that means no. I'm feeling more like myself. It's not great, but it's getting better. Tell him soon. And Vince McMahon says, I already told him, baby. By the way, Johnny wants Tuesdays, not this coming one, and we get into the sexual shifts of trafficking. Is there any other ones where she says no? No, there's no sort of thing in there. Let's have a look. It's a really interesting question, Norma. And this is why we're sort of talking about it and going into it in this depth. And hey, if you're watching this in the future, leave a comment. Let me know what you think, how we're handling this on the channel. It is great to know. No, there's no more there. But I'd say that does imply that. And I'd say that these text messages aren't everything that they're going to have at all. Okay. Right. These complaints will keep on coming. These compliments will keep on coming. So I'm buying you gifts. They'll keep coming. Just wait and see. I totally understand. On you being scared of communication and photos. Johnny gets drunk. That said, have you and Johnny talked about breakfast? We haven't discussed it at all. It's up in the air. Johnny complained about getting a new amount of time to set it up. He's erased everything. Truly, I regret that he ever got the pics. It's not worth stressing. I'm feeling I'm done with it. I mean, so at that point there again, she said, when she said I'm done with it, she said no, right? Or is that me being biased? Pretty sure she said no there. I need to figure out how to use this better. There we go. Cool. I'm sure there'll be more examples as we go. I mean, Jesus, the Ashley Massaro affidavit, anyone? Ashley Massaro, which was something that Dutch Mantel mentioned on his story time with Dutch Mantel. And I did hear Vince was around the divas. He would have them sometimes in a manic state. They would come out of the room sometimes with him shaking, sometimes I assume with them shaking. Then he would sit in the corner and not talk to anyone, but you could tell something between them that upset them. You remember the story about Ashley Massarano? She ended up killing herself, correct? Dutch Mantel. Read into that what you want. I don't know enough about the Ashley Massaro case, but I wonder if there was an NDA put on her. I don't know. I assume we all know that, says the wrestling booker. Steph has already been back, but as a fan only. Okay, interesting. I didn't know that. And what happened with Ashley Massaro? Remember, she passed away young, or am I wrong about that? It is 12:30. Are we going to go into Ashley Massaro tonight? Or do we do it tomorrow? We'll do it tomorrow. Okay, we'll do it tomorrow. We'll look at it properly. But we will search the Ashley Massaro affidavit tomorrow, and we will discuss it here then these streams are pretty heavy, and I've been going for 1 hour 40, so I hope you understand, man. Give me another week, baby. Ain't much of a no. A good lawyer is gonna give her holy hell for that statement. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. Good point, Norma. Maybe I'm putting my personal bias into it, which I shouldn't do, but well done. Yeah, you're right. A lawyer is going to pick that to pieces. Because I can't confidently say that's a no. Yeah, a lawyer's going to pick that to pieces. His Noya will have her looking like brass nail. We'll see what happens, man. I think, it's interesting. If WWE go against Vince as well, then I could. Sets Ashley Massara affidavit. She alleged to have been the victim of a violent sexual assault while on a tribute to the troops' overseas tour. High up WWE officials, including Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn, were notified by Ash's WWE doctor after she returned to the States. They persuaded her to not make the information public. So was an NDA put on that then? Anyway, appreciate the content and the work you do looking into all this. Before I head out off topic a bit, but who do you think should face Seth in WrestleMania? I think it's going to be Cody. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you for coming, and I'm sorry for sort of getting worked up about it earlier. You're right to have your opinion, and actually, it's the right opinion to have. People should be innocent until proven guilty. And you are absolutely right. Absolutely right. You shouldn't pass judgment on people. However, I suppose I get upset or passionate about it because I've looked at this a lot and I see them sort of that what I see as evidence. And I hope he does go into court, and I hope he does have his opportunity to defend himself. I really do. Because I'd be interested what his defense is. And that's what today's video was about. It was about Laurinaitis' defense, that he was a victim of Vince McMahon as well. And so, if you've just joined us in the video, go check out the start of the video. Again, we sort of go into the court case and look a lot about the allegations and try and read it from what Laurinaitis' lawyer was. That was the purpose of today's stream. Laurinaitis' lawyer said it was a misguided complaint. Laurinaitis is a victim in the case, not a predator. The truth will come out. Read the allegations. Count how many times in the complaint Vince exerts control over them. And that's what we did at the start of this stream. We read it in terms of what Laurinaitis' defense is. And from the start of the relationship, we established that actually it could have been, he could have been a victim of McMahon in terms of how they met. That defense would absolutely stand true. The thing I have a problem with is when there was alone together, regardless of the threesomes, when there was alone together and the abuse continued. That's what I have a severe problem with. Okay. The whole thing is online to read. Thank you, man. I will definitely have to look it up, my dude. I'll look it up and it'll probably come in tomorrow night stream. I think I'll do a stream tomorrow night, guys, because I've got loads of quotes and stuff that I want to talk about from the Bellas, Dutch Mantel, Maria Kanellis, Triple H. We'll talk about him at the Rumble, Meltzer, of course, and read a little bit of that. But I do appreciate you all being here, man. I also recommend reading what Paul London, her ex-boyfriend, says about the time and situation and how she was again all online. I'm gonna have a lot to read. Thank you, Wrestling Booker. Sounds like a very wise man there. Mr. Alex, are you aware the feds are officially investigating Vince? Yes, I am aware of that. I haven't really brought it up in the videos, Mr. Alex. Thank you for bringing it up. I am aware that they're investigating Vince. But right now, it's very difficult to speculate on because we don't know anything about why they're necessarily investigating him. Yes, people are saying that Vince's computers and mobile phone has been seized by the feds. I've absolutely heard that. And if that is the case, then some of this will be true. However, the difficulty with going into that is there's no allegations being made either way just yet. The feds have something they could be investigating him for, which may or may not be related to this case. I don't know. I would probably assume so with the horrific details of it, but I don't know for definite. So I don't want to assume that until we find out the details of that, and if we are to find out the details of the investigation by the feds. Okay. Right now, what we have is we have some allegations from Ms. Grant. Okay. Whilst Vincent Kennedy McMahon is innocent until proven guilty, but with John Laurinaitis' statement coming out, it seems to have thrown Vince under the bus and indicating that there's truth in the allegations made by Grant. And that was the whole point of this video, man. And I do appreciate you bringing it up because I think we're going to end on this. Laurinaitis said, I've said it again, I'll say it again, I'll say it again, that he said it's a misguided complaint. He doesn't say it's not true. He says he denies the allegations and it's a misguided complaint. He will defend the charges. He's not a predator. The truth will come out. It says, read the allegations. Count how many times in the complaint Vince exerts control over them. Laurinaitis, in this statement released by his lawyer, which may be a completely different argument in court and absolutely can be, John Laurinaitis, in that statement right there, says, read it. Some of it's true. He's corroborating parts of Miss Janel's Grant's story at that point. It's going to be messy if it gets to court. Also, apparently, the brother of the now deceased Tom Cole, who is Lee Cole, has been subpoenaed by the feds on the Vince investigation. Really? I did not know about that at all, my friend. Tom Cole. That's something I'll have to look up for, maybe talk about tomorrow. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. And thank you all for, I appreciate it. If you're watching this in the future, the last video I did like this did a lot of views in the future. So I appreciate it. You probably got me on in the bath or doing your pots or whatever, as I do with other podcasts. I appreciate you and hope there's been some value in this stream somewhere. We might not all agree on everything. That's absolutely fine. A jury won't all agree on everything. But what we can do is read what we've got and come to an understanding of it. And I think the overwhelming response is it's not the overwhelming response. If these allegations are true, it's wrong. It's wrong. Okay. Lee Cole has a channel covering the Ring Boy incident. Okay, man. I don't know about it. Alex, I will look it up, man. I will look it up after I've ended the stream. Speaking of ending the stream, I ending it right here. A massive thank you to everyone that's contributed in tonight's discussion, talk, as well as the sort of looking into the details of the court case. There will be more videos like this, so subscribe, give me a like. It really helps when I get comments after these. It makes it worthwhile doing. So write a comment on the stream if you're watching this in the future. Let us know that you're not enjoying the content, but you appreciate the content, because it's not easy to do. It's not easy to talk about. I do appreciate you all, and we'll continue to follow this. So stay subscribed to the Gimme a Hole Yeah. Until next time, stay safe.